Hello and welcome to a post-game edition of the Nittany Dispatch. I'll get this out of the way now. I'm sure you all want us to get into the guts of this game, but don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Hit the like and subscribe button below if you were watching on YouTube. I am John Sauber, covering Penn State football for the Center Daily Times. She is Audrey Snyder, covering Penn State football for The Athletic, and we just watched a lot.
Something.
This was.
First of all, John, first of all, I feel like we got to get this out of the way in case you're unaware or you want to forget it or you've had too much to drink today and aren't sure what happened.
We're still drinking.
Yeah, there were a lot of people when I walked to my car around
Yes.
7:30 tonight still celebrating not a win, but drowning their sorrows, and a few Michigan fans still lingering and celebrating. Michigan gets the win 24-15. Rinse, lather, and repeat, John. The big game Nittany Lions are still here.
Yeah, this was, I think for a lot of people, disheartening. I'm sure you do too, with friends that are Penn State fans. I had one reach out to me and say, like, they're just done, like they don't know what to do, like, you know what I mean? Like they're just sick of getting their hopes up. I had some reach out and be like, I'm speechless, right? Like this felt like, and I tweeted this when I tweeted my story, which you can find over at centerdaily.com. You can find Audrey's writing, of course, at theathletic.com. I tweeted like this felt like 10 years collapsing down on everyone at once. The 10 years, this is year 10 of the James Franklin era. This felt like all of it, like post game, even it felt like the players who have not been here that long felt the weight of it, right? Like it felt like everyone was feeling what just happened.
Yeah, this was a monumental game for this program, a monumental moment. And the end result was more of the same. Like to me, that is I think disheartening is a good word. I think you look at it, and John, all of us, or most of us on the beat, I know I definitely did. We looked at this year and we said, okay, this is James Franklin's most talented roster from an overall perspective. Like you can make a couple arguments there with maybe some other teams, but you've got the 5-star quarterback who's a sophomore, the 5-star running back who's a sophomore. You know, you've got all this talent. You've got another year with your offensive coordinator, and it is more of the same. And to me, that is the thing that you're spot on. This was as tense as it has ever been at the end of a game during the James Franklin era. You and I were down on the sidelines for the last 5 minutes of the game. And, fans are going to the exit with about 4 minutes left. After that Blake Corum touchdown, essentially, people started to trickle out. I watched the gentleman come down to the railing and he shouted F you, Franklin, in James's direction. Obviously, James still has the headset on. He's looking out at the field. This guy then takes a few steps toward the exit, doubles back, clings onto the railing, and yells "F you" again, like really loud. Like it was. There were so many scenes like that where it was almost surreal because you're like, okay, this is a fan base, and I know like a couple people. It's not indicative of everyone. I don't want it to come across that way.
For sure.
But the amount
it is indicative of, like, I think the frustration that everyone was feeling, right? Some people did not act appropriately, or like
some people probably had too much to drink.
For sure.
And I mean, I saw one fan who probably was like college age, just like downright sobbing. Don't know if it was the game, if it was something else, but yeah, there were a lot of emotions on that field at the end of the game. And John, to me, it's like you needed to split with Ohio State and Michigan this year to show the fan base that you had made progress. And you did neither. I mean, we're probably looking at a 10-2 team again. Maybe they get into a New Year's Six game. Maybe they don't. But we say, and I say we can get into that too, because I think that's going to be interesting. Because again, what do you hang your hat on at this point? You beat Iowa and you beat West Virginia. Like that is just with a roster this talented, it just feels like they're not maximizing what they have. And yes, this is a really good Michigan team, but this is also a Michigan team that arrived in State College Friday afternoon with Jim Harbaugh, only to land and upon landing find out, oh yes, he's not allowed to coach tomorrow. And I was at the Michigan hotel on Friday before getting kicked out because no one was allowed to be in the hotel because they had rented the whole place out. This was your chance. I mean, you can't beat Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. You can't beat Michigan without Jim Harbaugh, right? Like, it's a mess.
I think, I'm sure there will be people that disagree with me, but I think losing your head coach on game day is less
Not as huge
consequential
of
for a
a yeah.
program like Michigan,
Well,
right? It's not
especially
like
because
he's
'cause they've
throwing the
played
offense
without him
or anything.
before this year. Yeah.
Right. Yes, 100%. But
Yep.
even like I feel like there are probably some Miami fans out there, and I can't remember who said this on Twitter, and I apologize for stealing the joke, that wish this could happen no matter what for Miami, right? That they had Mario
Yeah.
Cristobal coach on Sunday through Friday, and then he was suspended on
Keep him away
Saturday.
on Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like I'm sure there are fan bases that really feel this way about their coaches.
Honestly, there
Uh,
might be some Penn State fans that are feeling this way, right? Like,
I was not gonna say it, but you did, and I
well,
think that you're probably right.
mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I think, and to further paint the picture, because obviously people don't get to see necessarily what we see like when we're going through the tunnel. And we're on the field at the end of the game, right? Like actually on the
Yeah.
field. And I usually watch James and Drew, right? And I try and position myself between them so I can see kind of what both are doing and looking back and forth. And Drew walked away, seemed relatively fine, flustered, not like, I shouldn't say fine. He wasn't like, oh, happy that this happened. He was
Right.
frustrated, but like this wasn't like a massive emotional letdown like, I think Ohio State
Yeah, it
was for him.
wasn't yeah.
Yeah. But I looked at James and he was kind of lingering around after the alma mater, like waiting. Like, I was trying to figure out what he was waiting for. I think he might have been waiting for the entire team to get in the
He
tunnel
usually
first
wants to
before
get
he
them
went.
all off. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And but there are times when he's in there early, and because it's just the nature of the beast with it. And as we go through, obviously, like, you see a player getting into it with a fan, and James like pulling him away, and
And
Pat
to be
Kraft
clear, I
pulling the
mean,
player
we
away.
there's Penn State, of course, runs out their tunnel, the student section's above it,
Yeah.
and there were some students that were
Yes.
yelling at James Franklin or trying to, I guess, direct their frustrations at James Franklin. A couple players, it seemed like, or at least one for sure, felt that that frustration was being eh, pointed at them.
Yeah.
It wasn't,
Or
but the
or was
player,
the
yeah,
frankly was defending their coach, like, which is,
yeah,
I
it could have
think.
been that, yeah.
Yeah, and you get what I think was, that was like one of those moments where you kind of realize the gravity of all of this, right? You
Mhm.
realize how tense it is, because the yelling on the field, like, that stuff does happen anyways. People are yelling stuff not as frequently, but it does happen. But I think when we walk down that tunnel and you go through and you have the fans lined along the sides there
Yep.
as they're making that walk back to the locker room, and then there are people in the tunnel club, and James and players are usually like, I
They're
think it
getting
was
booed.
2 weeks ago. Yeah, I saw Daquan Hardy like giving his glove to fans, like, and like they have the win cam there and everything.
Yeah, there's
They're
no
getting
loss cam,
booed.
John, we learned that
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, we
Well,
did.
I think we
But
saw the loss cam, yeah.
yes, the lost game is everything we have recorded.
Yeah.
But the like, you heard the booing and it was drowning out people like yelling, "You
Mhm.
suck.
Yeah.
Win a game." Like you could feel the tension because we were walking right behind them, right? I'm probably
Yes.
10 feet away from James, so were you. You could feel how tense it was, and I don't remember feeling that in a post game like walk, you know what I mean, like that. Even when they
Yeah.
lost to Ohio State last year, it was not like that. Like, it did
No,
not
not at
like,
all.
it felt somber, but it didn't feel like, you could really feel the fans' anger today, I thought.
To me, what I compare it to, and again, I've been here since the end of the Paterno era, so, right? So all of O'Brien, all of
When I was in
Franklin.
high school, to be clear.
Yes, when John was maybe in diapers, who knows?
Yeah, I was a solid 15 or 16 at the time.
But, I mean, you have to me, you have the Minnesota moment where they were getting booed at the half, right, before that turning point in 2016 to really get the season going. Like, that was just one of those jarring, like, "Ooh, this is getting bad" moments. But they win the game, so you kind of forget about it a little bit. To me, the loss to Ohio State by 1 point in 2018, that was more shock because you're in a tight game, down to the last couple minutes, 4th and 5. This was just like a oh my god, it's happened again. We're fed up. And honestly, I think if you're a Penn State fan, it also probably feels a little bit helpless because there's not anything else you can really do about it. I mean, the James Franklin's contract is what it is. He's not going to go anywhere.
He's not
Um,
going anywhere unless he decides to go somewhere.
right.
Penn
Yes.
State
Unless
is
he
not
buys
going to.
himself out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
or
and
gets
that's
another
we're
job,
we're
whatever.
not there yet. Like, and I
Yeah,
think
they're
yeah, the
it's not
thing for
happening.
him is he's gonna keep saying, "Well, okay, because you still gotta play Rutgers and Michigan State, so let's say it here, John, you're gonna go 10 and 2."
Well,
You
here's
never
the
know. I
thing.
mean, unless it
Here's the thing.
fractures.
Right, like, I don't think I would blame guys, and I'm sure fans won't wanna hear this, like, but if they, like, mentally checked out, like, how many guys came back for this? Olu Fashanu, Adisa
Yeah.
Isaac, like, these guys came back to win one of these games, and you watch Adisa dominate out there, like,
Yeah.
all 60 minutes. Like, he was incredible when
He's
he was on
making
the field.
himself a lot of money this year.
Yes, like, we talk about it, I think he's gonna be a
Mhm.
first round pick, and I think he deserves to be in the conversation with Chop, frankly, is, like, the best pass rusher on the team, and we know Chop is probably gonna be a first round pick because of the athleticism and everything. But you watch guys like that make that decision and then they lose. Like, they didn't come back to lose these games, right? Like, it goes unsaid, like, that they did not
This
come
was
back to
supposed to
lose
be
these games.
different, right?
Yeah,
That
this
was the
was
whole
supposed to be a
narrative.
year that things changed.
Eh,
Yes, and, like, I can't I can't get past this idea that it feels like a foregone conclusion at this point coming into these games, right? Like, it feels impossible. I compared it in my story. I said, when is Penn State going to stop like trying to knock a team off as David and be Goliath, right? Like,
yeah.
when are they going to get there? And I don't know what that path looks like right now. I know
Yeah,
I
you
don't
don't wanna
know what the
sound
step
too,
looks like.
like, too desperate, too dire right now, but
But it's not just
it's
one
not
game, and I
good,
think
and
fans
that's
can
the thing.
understand this. It's
That's the
10
thing.
years
We've
of this.
seen the sample size. The sample size is big enough where, again, like, I felt this way coming into this year, but I think we can kinda double down on it. James Franklin, Penn State in big games, it's not good. And
No.
that to me is, like, the thing that has to change, right? So here's the stat. We have this up on The Athletic as part of our instant reaction piece. Penn State has lost 13 of its past 14 games against AP top 10 teams since its win in the 2016 Big Ten title game. So they've lost 13 of the last 14 against AP top 10 teams. That ain't good. Now, and I say that's not
It's
good
downright pathetic.
in the context of you have one of the highest paid coaches in college football. James Franklin is getting paid a lot of money not to come here and just, okay, cool, you beat Illinois, you beat Northwestern, you beat Rutgers, probably Michigan State, et cetera, et cetera. You have this huge contract because you're supposed to be competing with the elite programs.
You're
And
supposed
time
to not
again,
just
we're
be
seeing that they're
competing,
not doing it.
they're supposed to
Yeah.
be on that level. They are supposed to be
Yeah.
an elite program. And I understand. I've heard people say like, yeah, it's hard to beat top 5 and top 10 teams. It's
Mhm.
not supposed to be as hard when you're supposed to be a top 5 and top 10 team, right? Like those are supposed to be closer to maybe not 50-50 splits even, but 40-60, right? They're
Mhm.
3-7 against Michigan under James Franklin. They're 1-9 against Ohio State. Like, that's a 20% win rate against those two teams, and it's not like Michigan's been up this whole time either, and, like, some of those wins have came when they kinda got Michigan at a bad time. They're not beating either of these teams when they're great, outside of one game that, when you look back on it, feels even more like a fluke,
Scoop and
right? Like,
score.
yes,
Yep.
like, it took a lot, and, like, those guys on that team earned that victory, but the further away you get from it, it's now 7 years ago,
Yeah.
the more it feels like a fluke and the more it looks like a fluke, and the more you question like what the path is, like what the path forward is. And I'm going to ask you something that you asked me after the Ohio
Uh-oh.
State game
Mhm.
when we talked about this. Do you think Mike Yurcich is the offensive coordinator next year?
I do not, based off of how James Franklin responded to a question tonight.
This is what I
Now,
wanted to get into.
again, we could say that I could certainly be wrong. We know that's definitely a possibility.
Oh, not
But
us. We've never been wrong
what
before.
I wanna put some stats on this before we dive into it. Drew Allar completed 10 of 22 passes for 70 yards, 1 touchdown. Also 10 rushes for 49 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. Also an extremely costly fumble that he lost in the 3rd quarter. That to me was the turning point of the game. Penn State 238 yards of total offense. Again, the best defense in college football you're going against. Michigan had 287 yards. Uh, Jarring when you look at the passing yards for both teams. Penn State 74 passing yards, Michigan 60. Penn State 164 rushing yards, Michigan 227. Penn State was 4 of 14 on third downs. So to me, that's a problem. But they were 2 of 3 on fourth downs and 0 for 2 on 2-point conversions. But John, back to your question about Mike Yurcich. I think we can talk, and we always do a lot about James Franklin in these big games and this roster in these big games. Well, you know what? We've now seen a large enough sample size, I feel like, with Mike Yurcich that in these
Three
big
years.
games also has not been up to the task for the most part. I mean, I think you can point to Ohio State last year and say, wow, this is a Penn State team that I think the difference with last year is we didn't really think they had any business being in these games, where now you've got the 5-star quarterback
Yep.
who probably isn't here if it's not for Mike Yurcich. So you have that to factor in. But the 5-star quarterback does not look like a 5-star quarterback right now, and that's a problem. And that's been a problem now for a little bit this year. For as many steps forward as Drew Allar took against Maryland, we had said last week, I think you have to kind of put the caveat in there that it's Maryland. This isn't a great defense. Yeah, did not go well today. But John, the quote to me, um, that I think you gotta look back at is what James Franklin said afterward. He was asked about kind of how would he assess Drew Allar's play today, and James basically just like pivoted to this whole response of Mike Yurcich. Here it is. I pulled it up. He goes, again, he's asked about Drew Allar. He goes, "We got to
Yep.
do a better job of calling a game to allow a quarterback to get into rhythm. That is critical. We got to find easy completions for our quarterback to get into rhythm. That's what everybody does." Well, everybody except Penn State, John, because that is not a ringing endorsement for your offensive coordinator. And I feel like you kind of parse that with what was said after Ohio State and what was said after Iowa, that James said he was in the headset telling Yurcich, you got to stay patient, right? Go back to what's working. At this point, I struggle to see them moving forward
Me too.
for next season with Mike
Yes.
Yurcich. Again, this is just my gut. I'm not reporting
Yes.
anything,
Yeah, there is
but
to be clear, none of this conversation is reporting, but I
mhm.
do think the one thing is clear, I would be surprised if it happens mid-season. Now I say that and watch, we're gonna release this, like, right as some
Don't jinx
announcement
it.
gets made or whatever. I
No,
know.
I
It's
don't
gonna
th
create work for us on
yeah.
an NFL Sunday or something, but I like James has said in the past that he does not make those kind of evaluations in season, and I would not expect him to make that kind of call in season. They have 2 games left. If anything, like, you probably make it during December, right? Like, that's just kinda
2
when
games
that
to
stuff
pad the
happens.
stats, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's where we're
and
at.
and yeah, and the thing with Yurcich is he's 3 years in. You could probably hand wave away the first 2 years with quarterback play issues. You are supposed to have the quarterback now, who we
Mhm.
all know is talented, who we all know is capable, um, and you're not doing it, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
not putting it all together, and to speak to, like, what James said about the rhythm thing, what gets me is I understand wanting to get a guy into rhythm. It doesn't feel like there's anything easy available to Drew Allar, right? Like,
Right.
it doesn't feel like he talks
We
about
heard
getting
again today.
him into a
They gotta
rhythm.
get more separation. We've heard
Yes,
that
like,
like 12 times this year, it feels like. Yeah.
there's nothing they can create that is easy, right? Like, nothing's open
Mhm.
underneath quick enough. Like, nothing like, they can't put anything together to create that rhythm in the first place, and so, it's partially like chicken and the egg, right, with
Yeah.
Yurcich and the receivers, like, how much is Yurcich not
How
scheming things up
much?
for the receivers? How much is the receivers' inability to create so Yurcich can't scheme anything up for them? I don't know, but I do know that Dante Cephas was getting open again. I know Keandre Lambert-Smith was getting open again. I know that Caden Saunders, who got more snaps today,
Mhm.
with a pretty
Maybe
crucial
that's
catch
what they've been
too on a
sitting
4th
on all
down.
year. Maybe
Yeah,
that's been the
well,
plan. Yeah, just
really
sit on
paid
it
off.
all year.
But those guys were getting open, those 3 receivers, and I don't know, like, I feel like if the elite of the elite offensive coordinators, which again is what Penn State's supposed to have if it wants to be in that group, has to be able to scheme those guys open, and they're
And
not.
we've asked time and time again in the past, because I know this often comes up with fans when we say about coordinators and they say, well, Penn State doesn't pay enough. Penn State is
They're
paying a
paying enough.
lot of money to their coordinators. We've always asked, and where does it rank within the Big Ten and all those types of things, which, quite frankly, we're probably going to have to start asking those questions again just to get it on the
Yeah.
record with a new athletic director. But yeah, this is offensive coordinator number 5 for James Franklin here at Penn State when we talk about themes and parallels, and it's still not good enough. And this is the guy who you really wanted, who you fired Kirk Shiraka to get after that COVID season. Which, by the way, Shiraka comes to town next week with
Yeah,
Rutgers.
that'll be a fun
So
reunion.
there's a fun
I'm looking
wrinkle.
forward to that post-game handshake.
Yeah,
I don't know if
there's is he
Kirk's
in
on
the
the field
booth?
or in the
I don't
booth.
remember. Yeah.
I think he might be in the booth, but I hope he's on the field
Well,
next week
you
still.
know, John, you say the booth. Can we revisit this? Like the whole thing of Mike Yurcich is in the booth. It's going to be way better. It's the best place to call a game. I believe all of that, but it's kind of tough to feel that way, right? Like it just,
I think it honestly
in
to me,
theory,
and
I
again,
get
this
it,
is
but
conjecture,
it's not
I
great.
think it was, like, kind of a last-ditch effort, like, but again, I am guessing.
Mhm.
It feels like a last-ditch effort by James to make it work, right? Like,
Could
like,
be,
they
yeah.
were finally like, "Okay, this we gotta," you know what I mean? "We gotta make
This
this
will make
change,"
the
right? Like,
difference, yeah.
yeah, this will make all the difference, and it just hasn't because nothing has made the difference this year.
The other
Because there is
thing,
nothing different, by the way.
eh, rinse, lather, and repeat, baby. Penn State football in
Yep.
2023. If it looks a lot like what you saw in 2022, you're in luck. It might look a lot
Yeah.
like what you'll see in 2024.
Well,
Whew, I
we'll
mean,
see if there's. And here's the other thing, like, there's gonna be a lot of discussion about Manny Diaz this offseason. The longer this goes,
John,
the more I believe
John,
that
it
Manny
is
Diaz is gonna.
November 11th, and we've officially entered off-season talk and portal
I
talk around
know.
here. That's
This
how
is not
bad
good.
today went for Penn State.
Yeah, I tend to think Diaz will be back next year, though. It's a guess, it's a gut instinct, but I think
I
he'll
do
be
not
back.
agree with you, but okay.
I just don't think the type of job is gonna come
Mhm.
available that makes sense. I think
Yeah.
there are some potential ACC jobs that I would keep an eye on if they come open,
Mhm.
but outside of that, like, it's tough. Anyways, not a discussion we need to have today.
Oh, we'll have
We
plenty
need
of
to
time for
talk about
that on the
yeah,
offseason.
just well, and maybe over the next 2 weeks too,
Well,
because, like, I think that's
oof.
people wanna know, right? Like, people need to have a reason to believe again next year, and I think the other point of discussion with this is so the playoff expands to 12 next year, right? And
Mhm.
so it's gonna be kind of easy if James wants to next year to hand wave away all of these issues with like, look, we're in the playoff now, right? Like, look, we're in the playoff again
Mhm.
in 2025. Look, we're in it again in 2026. They would
We're in
have
the
made it
playoff as
5 out of the
we're in a
last 7
playoff and we
years.
lost a game, right? Like, that's not gonna
Yeah.
it's gonna change
If
the
they went by
perception, but yeah.
the 5+7 format that it seems like it's gonna switch to, if they
Mhm.
went by that for the last 7 years, Penn State would have been in 5 of 7 times.
Right.
And as I put in my story, that's great. But then 10 wins, like that benchmark, is actually the same thing because then it just turns into a first or second round exit because you're
Exactly.
getting destroyed by
Yep.
Bama, Georgia,
Yep.
uh, Ohio State, Michigan. Like all those programs are still beating you. You're just losing a little later in the season. You're getting eliminated in a playoff rather than in the regular season. And so,
You
like,
can put on a recruiting graphic that you made the playoff field, but
yeah.
the results can be the results.
It's not the same thing. It is not making a
No.
playoff in this era of college football is not the same thing as what it's gonna be next year.
And
You're gonna give yourself a chance to win a title, more of a chance, but you're just gonna lose in the first or second round again unless something fundamentally changes with the offense.
and that was also cemented today, John. We can say officially Penn State will never make the 14 college football
Yep.
playoff.
I
Pour
think you just
pour one
jinxed
out.
teams 1
Pour one
through
out for the
9.
playoff.
Now Georgia's gonna
Uh,
lose its last 3 and Bama's gonna lose 2 more.
ain't
You
happening.
just jinxed everyone. No, I
But
know. But
no,
yeah, no, it's over. Like the idea of I'd hate to bring it up. 5 years ago, average to good to great, right? And that
great
being the
not yet
same
elite.
trek as great to elite. It's been
Mhm.
5 years. Like the first 5 years, they made that trek average good to great, right? And if it's supposed to take just as much, we're now another 5 years in, and they have not gone from great to elite yet.
They peaked in 16. Little did we know.
Honestly,
That's
like I
kind
think
of what
they
it feels
peaked
like.
probably in 17 or
17,
18,
and they just didn't
and
capitalize.
just didn't capitalize on it. And like that was
Mhm.
the real
And that
best
to me,
opportunity.
those Ohio State, because again, it comes back to the big 2 of Ohio
Both Ohio
State
State games
and
those
Michigan.
2 years.
Yep, those Ohio State losses really, I think, put this program back in many steps, but I think, John, the other part with this offense that I'm still struggling to there's a lot of things I'm struggling to wrap my head
Yeah.
around, but, they're so committed to the running back rotation, the 2 series by 2 series.
This this drove me
They're
nuts. Like I
committed
was like,
to a
yeah.
fault at this point, right? Because you and I were on the same page coming into this game where we said Katron Allen looks like the better back, go with Katron. But it was Nick Singleton's turn in the rotation. So Nick Singleton got the start.
Got the first 2 drives.
That's the 2 by 2 rotation continues. Now the thing that gets me and the thing that I asked James Franklin about after the game, um, there was a nice awkward pause in the press conference because he was finishing up answering
Yeah,
a question about 2-point conversions. I'm
this
standing
was
there, sitting there
painful,
with
and
the
I hated it.
microphone. Wasn't quite sure when I should speak. But anyway, I got my question out, had to repeat it because James Franklin was so focused on the other question. But what I
He was
asked
also
him.
taking some notes. I think he was trying to remember what sequence you were
Mhm.
talking about there.
No, I don't think the notes were about me, John. I do not
That's
think the
true.
note was about me.
That's probably true.
What I asked about was the sequence early in the second quarter. Penn State, Katron Allen, it was his series. First down, Katron Allen rushes for 9 yards. Second and 1, um, they throw the ball to Malik Mega, who loses a yard. Again, that is reserve receiver Malik Mega, who we do not see with the offense often at all. Special teams ace, right? Like that's kind of what it's been. So now
He's
you got
awesome on special
third and
teams,
2.
except today wasn't that either.
Well, third and 2, and Drew Allar takes off for a run, picks up 1 yard, Penn State punts. I was totally fine. They were at, like, I think, like, the 36 or 38. Totally fine with the punt there. Like, that's the
I
right decision. I like the
I don't
decision
agree
to
with
punt.
that. I don't
But
agree with that. I think we'll talk about that in a second.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
get to this
because
first, then
to
we'll talk about
me,
these decisions.
the issue was how you got to the punt. That was the problem, and so what I asked James Franklin was, Katron Allen runs for 9 yards. Why did he not touch the ball again after that drive? Because, right, you needed a yard. And Franklin's response was that essentially the call on second down was a run call, but what the defense showed, that's why Aller passed the ball. That they
It's
got
an RPO essentially.
yeah, they didn't get the look, so then you throw it to Mega, lose a yard. I didn't like the answer. I still say you come back third down, you go with one of your heavy
Yes.
packages, run the ball.
Yes.
Um, but that's not what they're doing. And to me, it's like how much of this is because I think we saw it again today. We got the flea flicker in there and some more gadgets, but no Bo Prabula package, right? Because they got it on film last week against Maryland, but did not use it
That's
in the
right.
two biggest games this year. So again, John, what the hell was the point? So you didn't use that either. You didn't use the T formation, and which I thought you could have also used that third or fourth down there. But I was okay with the punt. You had issue with the punt. There
So
are
this
a
was
lot of
my
decisions in this game. A lot of people had issue.
yes. This was my whole thing. I am actually okay with the first 2-point conversion attempt. A lot of people
Because
called
at
it
that
chasing
point, it
points,
was what? Was it 14 to
14 to
9?
9, and it would have
Mhm.
made it 14-11.
Yeah, so you're within a
So
field goal. I
so
was okay with that.
I I don't agree with the idea of chasing points. I see it as maximizing your scoring, right?
Mm.
Like, you're trying to score as much as possible. You're not thinking about necessarily. And James, I don't know if I agree with his logic, quite frankly. I agree with the decision, but I don't know if I agree with the logic. Like, he said it was like trying to make it a field goal game. To me, you're trying to score as much as possible, right? Uh
I think
I
that's
was
he said I think something like we thought points were going to be at a premium, so we wanted
Yes,
to.
but he
Yeah.
was, like, saying it from a standpoint of making it a three-point game. I don't agree with that part of it, but saying the points at a premium thing, I do agree with, right? So,
Mhm.
like, it was a little bit of a mixed message there, but I
I agree
digress.
with making it a field goal game, but whatever, John. We're
But no,
splitting hairs.
my whole thing is, like, trying to maximize your scoring opportunities
Mhm.
against a defense that's not going to give you many of them, right?
Right.
And so, to me, you need to decide going in, either A, we're going to go in, we're going to play conservatively, we're not going to go for it despite situations that maybe tell you you should, and we're going to be conservative and we're going to try and win this game despite, and maybe it's like 13-7 or 10-7 or whatever. Or you go in saying, we need to score as much as we can when we have the chance to. So when we're
Mhm.
given opportunities to go for it, we need to go for it. And I just got the sense following the game that there was no consistency from that standpoint, right? And you should honestly, the real answer is you should follow the chart whenever the chart says that you should go for it, but that's just never how this works for a lot
Right.
of coaches. I just think you need to either be aggressive and be the team that's going to say, we're going to win or die trying, or we're going to turtle up, right? And we're
Mhm.
going to play defensively and we're going to
Turtle
try and
power,
do it that way.
baby.
Yes. But to have, and this is the one that drove me insane,
Okay.
to be lined up to go for it on fourth down,
Oh, and
call
then
a
the timeout.
timeout,
Yes.
and then to punt, wasting a timeout in the second half is maddening. Like, what that's
That was like
I
with the
can't
Ohio
comprehend the
State
decision. Yes,
scenario
it's
where they
deja
took
vu.
because
Like,
they didn't have enough guys or they had too many guys on the field.
yes.
One of the two, yeah.
So much of this game, by the way, was directly paralleled with Ohio State. Like, even the ending, right? They go for it on fourth down, a decision that I was fine with, again, with like 4 minutes left,
Also,
whatever.
I have not watched
The next
rewatched that play call again, but I need to. That was a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on the field when that happened. I couldn't get a good view
That's
of
what
it.
yeah.
I'll do my rewatch tonight too, and we'll see what happened there. But like the next drive, Ohio State, I believe, then scored with Marvin Harrison Jr. The next drive for Michigan might have been the next play. Even it's already a blur, that last bit.
Yeah.
Blake Corum scores the touchdown, right? Like, there were so many parallels between this and Ohio State and how it all ended and everything. And I thought that decision to punt in that situation that I was talking about earlier, when you were originally going for it, right? And the funny thing is, and this is the wasted timeout, it was not as the play clock was hitting 0. The play
Right.
clock was going from 2 to 1, and Drew Allar had snapped the ball. They were going to get the playoff, and it looked like they had a well-designed rub route on the side of the field closest to us, on the west side of the field. Like, it looked like they were going to have a rub route to Caden Saunders and get that first down. And now it's tough to say. Michigan didn't play out the play, all of that stuff,
Yeah.
but they at least had a good design to get it. And they were going to get the playoff. Like, the play clock was not as much of a concern but I think Franklin got antsy, saw 2 seconds, and called the timeout with 2 seconds when he didn't need to do it. And so I just think, like, you have to have some consistency in a strategy with it. This is why I don't like the idea of we follow the analytics, but also we discuss it as a team. Either like
Mhm.
you're following it or you're not. Like, you like,
Yeah.
you can't just pick and choose when you're following these teams. Otherwise, you're not getting the benefit of the percentages, right? Like, you're to get the 50% hit rate when it's supposed to be 50%, you got to be doing it, right? You can't just be trying to pick and choose when you're going to get it. And so I just think, like, they came in with we talk about identity. It felt like they had no identity from an aggressiveness standpoint today either. And I thought that was a major flaw. And frankly, I would have been going all for it, like going for it, anything 4th and 2 or less, like giving your offense a chance to create when it hasn't had a chance all year, giving a chance to sustain drives and make something happen rather than just turtling up and going down 14-3 or whatever it was in that situation. Let's take a short break from the podcast and talk about a place that you may want to visit in the coming days to help yourself through this game. That, of course, is Voodoo Brewery in State College, located at 201 Elmwood Street in State. A place that, as we've said many times before, Audrey and I go to frequently. They have great beer. They have a great environment. They
Elite
have,
beer, elite
yes,
environment.
elite beer. They have a staff that's very welcoming too, that makes you feel at home. They're very friendly. You can sit at the bar and talk to the staff and have yourself a good time too. That's a very welcoming place. Sit by the creek, enjoy yourself. They have the tables down there. You can enjoy the nice running water, the ambience of nature around you.
Soothing setting. Yeah, it's a
Yes,
really good time. You can sit at the bar and fix the Penn State offense while you're there.
that's right.
How's that, right? Get you a Metmosa and sit there and think about how you would fix this offense.
Yes, figure out where this team goes from here. Of course, you can join them on Tuesdays for pub trivia every week. Bingo on Thursdays, both at 6 p.m. on those days of the week. As it gets colder, as we found out today, there will be fire pits, and you can go outside and stay warm, enjoy yourself some alcohol, and sit by the fire and stay warm.
And get some food.
Yes, get some food. Can't forget the Voodoo Kitchen that they recently opened that serves food as well. Get your drinks, get your alcohol there at Voodoo. That is Voodoo Brewing Company in State College, located at 201 Elmwood Street. Back to the show.
I it's so to me, this offense is so just tough to watch. I had a
Yep.
couple friends reach out and asked me to get in touch with our Iowa writer Scott Docterman at the Athletic, who does a tremendous job, and said, Audrey, you're gonna have to talk to Scott because this kind of looks a little bit like Iowa right now.
Yep.
And it's true. I mean, this is not the offense that I thought we were getting headed into this season at all. The other thing that stood out to me, John, was Keandre Lambert-Smith, complete non-factor today. I mean, he didn't even have a catch. I don't even know if
He
he
did
was
have one
target.
catch. He had one catch down the sideline on a 3rd down where he was short of the
You're
sticks
right.
by
You're
20
right.
yards.
One catch for
Yeah,
6
because
yards.
what's funny
You're
is
right.
I was sitting next to Bob Flounders and Johnny McGonigal, both of Penn Live in the
You
press
know,
box,
yes,
and we
because
had just mentioned that he hadn't had a catch,
yes,
and then I looked at the stat broadcast, like, wait, he had a catch, and I saw the play happen. It just didn't register. I was like, when
no,
did he
you're
have a
right.
catch? And I think it was Johnny looked at me. He's like, just now. You
Because
saw it happen. I was like, oh, right.
we were having a similar conversation down at my end. We're like, has Lambert Smith had a catch today? And then it happened, and we're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was nothing more to it, right? I mean, Penn
Four,
State's
four
leading.
targets on the day for Keandre.
Yes, leading receiver. Well, Tyler Warren had 2 catches for 25 yards, was targeted 4 times. Your boy Dante Cephas, 2 catches for 11 yards, was targeted 5 times. Theo Johnson, 2 catches for 10 yards, including a touchdown late in the game, and he was targeted 5 times. It was just not, we
32
heard.
yards after the catch, Audrey. 32 yards after the catch on 10
Oof.
completion or on 11 completions because I forgot Katron Allen's. By the way, we talk
Oh
about leading
God,
receivers.
yeah. Let's
Drew Allar,
let's
one
get
catch,
into the
4 yards.
tricks.
Yeah, we don't. Do we need to because this is whatever it worked once. Like, stop having people that aren't the quarterback throw the
Mm-hmm.
ball. Like,
Mm-hmm.
put Bowen in that situation. Do something that is conducive to success rather than. And they got lucky. Well, not got lucky. They executed whatever they
Yeah.
hit what they needed to hit there. But it's still
Got the
not
flea
something that I would
flicker
call. Yeah, the flea
later in
flicker.
the game. Yeah.
No one, not no one was open. Dante Cephas was open for a
Was.
moment in time, and Drew did not
Did
see
not
it.
see him.
Dante Cephas on the 2-point attempt was open, and Drew did not see it. Late in the game, I think it was on the 2-point attempt again, the later one where Tyler Warren was open on the right side of the
Oh,
field,
yes. That
and he
yeah,
threw
yeah,
it
yeah,
to
yeah.
Theo Johnson in the middle of the field. Probably it's going to be the best place to talk about Theo, and kind of
Yeah.
the post game scenes there. This was we get to know these guys, like you learn a lot about them, and Theo has always been, I think, really upfront with us and
Mhm.
pretty honest, intellectually and emotionally. Like, I don't think there's ever been like you felt like it was lip service. He was asked about the emotions of losing again in these big moments, and he started to like you could see the tears starting to form in his eyes.
I
And he
mean,
said
even when he was coming off the field, John, at the end, you could
he was
see, I mean,
emotional.
he was
Devon
spent.
Lee's too was emotional. Pat Kraft gave him a hug. I think James might have as well, if I remember correctly. But that or might have just been Pat with Devon. But Theo said, after that, there's a lot of people here that are counting on not just me but this team. I just feel like I let a lot of people down as he was cracking, like his voice was cracking, he was
Yeah.
tearing up. Then he said, could have played better as a captain. There's a lot of people counting on you to make plays. Then he got asked what he could have done better because it seemed like they put it all out there as an offense, like that the effort wasn't an issue. And there was like it's a tough moment from an empathetic standpoint, right? Because you're just standing there, kind of waiting, because there's nothing you can really say or do in these
Mhm.
situations. Where it's just dead silence from us and Theo for 20 seconds, right, of him just crying, right? Like he was upset and like it was all hitting him at once. Um, credit to the reporters there. I think everyone handled it well.
I was elsewhere in the room.
Yeah, to Greg Kincaid of Penn State, Stratcom 2 handled, I think, the situation well, gave Theo the option to leave. Theo chose to stay. I think everyone handled the situation
I will
properly.
say, John, while you're in this spot, kudos to the players who came out to talk to us afterward.
Yeah,
This is not easy, I'm sure. They put a hell of a lot of time and work and effort into this thing. So again, kudos, appreciate them making us do our jobs a little bit easier. Because again,
yeah,
we're working for the fans and people have answers. And I mean, they don't have to come and talk to us, but a bunch
correct.
of them did, and they were honest, and you could tell it hurt and it stung
Yeah,
a lot for them. But anyway, continue on,
yeah.
John.
And Theo finally didn't get it, wasn't able to answer that question, never really got to. And
Mhm.
credit to Neil Riddell, veteran member of the beat from the Altoona Mirror, who
Was his
gave him a
flashlight off?
question. It was his flashlight was indeed off. He was
Awesome.
not. I think he might have been using voice memos. I should actually ask him that.
I got him.
Yeah.
Good, good. We converted
Uh,
him.
we'll check in on that though.
On
At the
Monday.
Monday presser. Yeah. But Neil asked him a question that kind of allowed Theo to get his voice back and get rolling again, and that we went sort of ahead business as usual from that point. But you could just like it wore on him. Like
Mhm.
when I said about 10 years collapsing on these guys, like Theo was the epitome of that. And Curtis Jacobs too, like felt like the epitome of that.
Yes.
Like those guys like have been through a lot. They decided to come back. Like they could have left. Like say what you
Adisa
can have your
Isaac was
thoughts
another
on.
one who was asked about.
Yes.
Obviously, this
And you
is
can
not what
have
they
your
came
thoughts
back
on where they
for.
would have gone in the draft, but like
It's
they
irrelevant
came
now.
back to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, they came back to win and they didn't get it done. Like some of it's their fault, of course, too. But like there was, I'm curious. Did you talk to Deny after the game? Deny Dennis
I
Sutton?
did. Yes, I did.
What was your sense from him about how he was feeling about all of this? Because Deny is usually
He
very talkative.
seemed frustrated, seemed angry. And again, younger guy, I think it's different. I was talking to Adisa Isaac and then hopped over to talk to
Yep.
Denai and wanted to ask about his spy goggle celebration after the
Yeah,
one play that
it's
camera.
a
I
good
didn't see it
celebration.
live. Great
It's a
celebration.
good
I didn't see it
celebration.
live, but just asked him about that and he didn't really answer the question. But later on, somebody else came back to it and asked. And he was like, you know what? Like, you gotta have fun out there with this. Like, I was just trying to have fun, fire up my team, whatever. Like, these are college kids having fun. I have
Yep.
no issue with that whatsoever. I forget which Michigan back it was, but somebody had told me because again, I didn't see it live, but somebody mimicked the Manny Diaz from the Penn State tweet earlier this week about the show up
I
early,
think
be
it.
loud on third down, like mimicked that after one of the
Yeah,
big plays or
I don't want to
touchdown.
say who I think it was because I don't want to misattribute, but whatever. We'll move on.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah, I think like
it apparently was
all
a
of
thing
this
that
stuff
happened. Maybe you
is.
saw it on TV.
I never
Um,
have issue with any of these things for what it's worth, as long as it's
no,
not like malicious or
it's a
whatever. Like it's
game.
all
It
fun.
literally at the
Yes.
end of the day, it's a game, and you're supposed to be having fun. And
Chop did the flop earlier this season
yeah, the
against
chop flop after
Iowa.
Iowa,
Yeah,
like,
it's
I
all
mean,
good.
it's yeah, you're out there to celebrate, have fun. You put a lot of time and effort into this thing. Like, go at it, have a good time. But yeah, I mean, I definitely got the sense of frustration from a guy like Denai, and I think Curtis Jacobs too. I mean, you could tell his looked visibly upset. Said what he wanted
Yep.
to do when he got out of there was go and hug his mom. Right, definitely gave off like the Caleb Williams last week. I want to go home and
Yeah.
cuddle with my dog vibes. There was a lot of that today,
You
and
feel
understandably
like
so.
This is where it's tough. Where like a lot of the job, I think for us is being empathetic because you're trying to
Mhm,
tell the story of what. Because our job is to tell the story of what happened today. I've said that a lot today, way more than usual. But our job is to tell the story of what happened, and to do that, you're trying to empathize with these guys and kind of put yourself in their shoes and what
mhm.
they're feeling and what they're seeing, right? And like when because I think it was you and I were there asking Curtis that line of questions, uh, and like I asked him about like what he how he gets through this, and like it kinda sucks, right? Like, it kinda sucks to hear him be like, "I just wanna hug my mom," but it's just like, he's this is a re like, for fans, it's difficult and they don't wanna lose, but it's really hard on these guys too. But back to Deny, I thought, like, I was this was the most frustrated I had ever seen him. Like, genuine frustration, seemed angry for someone that's always open with us. He was pretty curt with his answers today, like, he just seemed flustered, and,
I
like, that
wanna
this was bothering him.
I think, John, and again, this is me speculating here, but I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I think it was maybe after the Ohio State game, where it's like, okay, you've got this defense that's playing as well as they possibly can, and you have an offense that can't help them out. At what
Yep.
point does it start to splinter, and does the defense say, you know what, like we're done. We've done as much as we can. You guys can't score any points. And I mean, to be fair, the defensive players that we talked to, they did toe the company line and they did say, well,
Yep.
they kind of paused and they were like, well, we gave up too many points.
Shouldn't
Well,
have given up 24.
the thing that stuck out to me with the defense, the explosive plays, it just felt like so many of them were coming on third down too. Like I
Well,
go
here
back
this
to the
is
McCarthy one early.
well,
Yeah, like,
there were 2 plays that directly resulted essentially in 14 points for Michigan that
mhm,
you can put on Manny Diaz, right?
mhm.
That you like, I mean, actually probably 3 because there
The
was
Prowler getting put
one
out the
run too.
pasture today.
They put the Prowler out there, on 3rd and 10, and I was joking with Bob the whole game that, like, Michigan's got them right where they want them. They're gonna kneel on 1st and 2nd down so they can get the Prowler out there on 3rd and 12 and then run the ball because they clearly saw a weakness because most teams were not running against the Prowler package, which is, essentially 5 pass rushers, 6 defensive backs. Pass rushers can linebackers, defensive ends, some combination of the 2, usually, and 6 defensive backs. And so they put this out there. The first time that it kind of failed was that 3rd and 10. JJ McCarthy runs for a first down, and it was like, oh,
Is that
that's
when he,
we
yeah, when he
hadn't
picked
seen
up
that.
13, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and they ended up going on the long drive. I believe that was their first touchdown of the game.
Yes.
Uh, and then you have it happen again. This time on 3rd and 11, they give it to Donovan Edwards, who runs for a 22-yard touchdown. And it's like, okay, clearly this is a problem here. Like clearly they cannot stop the run in
Yeah.
the Prowler package. And so they stopped going to it pretty much. They went to a base nickel, or not base nickel, but to a nickel with either a third safety or a third cornerback and just kept 2 linebackers out there, kept 4 defensive linemen out there, with defensive tackles out there. But yeah, like 14 of those points, I think you can attribute to Manny Diaz and like a schematic failure, right? Like it's a lot to ask those guys to defend the run when the idea of the formation is pin your ears back, go get the quarterback, and for the guys in coverage, give us enough time to go get the quarterback, right? That's what
Yeah.
they're thinking. And this, like, I don't know, maybe I'm putting too much blame on Manny, who has been excellent for the most part this year. But like to me, those 2 plays are on him, right? And they made the adjustment, but not in enough time. And so it's like, all right, 14 points you can put on the defensive coordinator, and the other 10 points, like yes, they should not have given up those 10 points, but this was not from a player standpoint,
But
this was
John,
not that bad of a performance.
you know who's not gonna say we should put those 2 touchdowns on Manny Diaz?
Who's
The
that?
players who absolutely love the
Of
guy.
course not. Yeah.
They are
Well,
not gonna say
this
that,
is
right?
good coaching. This is how you know that this is like this guy's beloved and that he's a
Yes.
good coach. The players, when he is probably at fault, will eat the blame because they
Mhm.
respect him and because they want to play for him and everything. So, but yeah, I think like from a play
And
standpoint, I
to
actually
while you're
don't think
saying this,
things were that
to Drew
bad.
Allar's credit as well, he was asked
Yep.
about Franklin's comment about Yurcich, and Drew said, "I missed way too many throws today." So he again,
Yep.
nope,
And
nobody's throwing anyone under the bus here, just so we're
yes.
clear. Yeah.
Well, none
Well,
of the
except
players,
for
but
us, but we just, I
yeah,
mean, we do that
yeah.
regular. That's part of the gig. Yeah.
But I think like and frankly, Drew did not play well enough today. He missed too many throws. He had too many timing routes where the ball was thrown too far inside. One of Keandre Lambert Smith's targets was what looked like either a comeback or an out route. Again, I have not rewatched the game yet, where he threw the ball too far inside and the defender was able to break it up. That happened way too often. Drew was not good today. I thought he was significantly worse than the Ohio State game. This was his worst game of the season. But yeah, like for the defense, this was, I thought they played well. I thought they had a few schematic shortcomings that cost them
4th
early, but
down,
for the most part, like, those guys went and got it.
I go back to the McCarthy run that you mentioned on the 3rd and 10 where he picks up 13, and man, it's just when you're watching it up from our view in the press box and you see Michigan get those big offensive linemen out ahead blocking, you're just like, "Ain't nobody getting anywhere near them."
Yep.
But for me, the 4th down conversion that McCarthy had, gosh, later on in the game, Kellen King kinda comes up, tries to tackle him, gets
Yeah,
worked.
just missed. Yep.
To me, that was a big moment, and we mentioned earlier Drew Allar's fumble early in the 3rd quarter, Penn State's first drive, and again, to me, like, huge momentum shift, right? Like, you get that touchdown before the half, you get the ball back, good field position, Aller fumbles, and not to rub salt in the wound, but he would have gotten the first down the way it
Yeah, he
looked like
had it.
where he was, like, he had it. Um, Loses the fumble, Michigan recovers, great starting field position. The thing that I found so crazy, Michigan then goes on, turns that into a field goal. I leaned over to the people next to me and I was like, "Is it just me or does it feel like that Michigan field goal drive just took an hour?" It took over 8 minutes off the clock.
Yes.
It
I
was
did
not.
not realize, like, there was 3.5 minutes left in the half. I was like, "When did
Yes.
this happen?" Or in the 3rd quarter. I was like,
An
"This is a big
8-minute
noon
field goal
kickoff
drive,
game
yes.
with, I think, 4-minute TV timeouts," right? Big noon usually has.
A lot of TV timeouts, it felt like,
They feel
eventually
like they're
late
an
in the game,
hour
yeah.
long, and, like, they're like, those games usually take forever, big noon games do. They're usually, like, done at, like, nearly 4 o'clock. I think this game was over at, like, 3 because that Michigan drive just, like,
Yeah.
just chewed the entire clock of the 3rd quarter, and eventually, like, I think that's a big reason Michigan won, right? Because the Penn State just, I mean, also their offense couldn't get going, like all the other issues, but, like, the other
Well,
thing is,
there's
like, Penn
that.
State, yeah, like, but they also
Eh.
just didn't have time. Like, there was 18
Yeah,
minutes
I'll
of
tell you
game
what
time by
though,
the
I
time
mean,
they got the
you
ball
look
back.
at I just pulled it up, time of possession, I know it was nearly identical at the half, it was literally off by, like, a second or 2 per team at the half, and eventually, because obviously late in the game start always skews things a bit, Michigan had the ball for 33 minutes and 12 seconds, Penn State 26 minutes and 48 seconds, so not terribly difficult or different rather, I mean, um, but again, the turnover, John, like, this is an offense that's been so ball secure all year. Michigan has the fumble early in the game. Penn State doesn't recover it. Drew Allar has the fumble. Michigan recovers it, turns it into 3. Now, the other thing, because again, that was in the 3rd quarter, which was like the quirky stat coming into the game, was that Penn State had outscored people 97 nothing in the 3rd quarter, but Michigan was also outscoring people 114 to nothing in the 3rd quarter. So to me, that was the money quarter. And then that 8-minute field goal drive kind of put me to
The
sleep
funny
for a
thing
little bit.
is, those stats didn't change much. Like, it was
No,
3-0.
no.
Like, Michigan won 3-0 in the 3rd
Yes.
quarter.
The
Uh,
big old 3rd quarter swing momentum, 3 points.
yeah, 3 points. But no, I think this was the fumble. I don't know if everyone will agree with this, but, like, fumbles are generally luck, like, on
Yeah,
who
there's some
recovers
luck
them.
for
They have
sure.
nothing to do. No, I mean, from a recovery standpoint, they
Yeah,
are all luck. Like,
yeah.
there's, like, some, like, learning to dive on the ball and stuff like that, but for the most part,
Right
it's just, like,
place at the right time.
yeah, literally where the ball bounces. Now,
Mhm.
forcing a fumble is more skill and everything like that, but, like, who recovers it is a coin flip, and the fact that there were 2 in this game, Michigan recovered both of them, 1 by each team, like, on some level, that's just unlucky, but I think Aller was carrying the ball too loosely, and that was he was kind of begging for it to happen eventually, that he was going to get stripped on one of those
But,
runs,
John, we
and
praised
and
the
Abdul
guy.
Carter, by the way, like, drills Blake Corum
Yeah.
and, like, forces the ball out, and the ball just stops. Like, it
Yep.
didn't there was no, like, the ball didn't, like, it wasn't
It
flying any
just
the
died.
ball just stops, and immediately they recover it, and, like, that's bad luck for Penn State. Bad luck is not why they lost this game, but it is why they lost both of those turnovers.
Oh, yeah, no, and I think too, it's like you go back and you look at some of those moments, and to me, it goes back to the explosive plays and that Penn State, again, not explosive enough. If I think of this off the top of my head, John, most explosive play of the day for the Penn State offense,
I think I
probably the
know this.
Katron Allen run, probably, I'm
I
guessing.
think it was Katron's 34-yard run. I mean, it would be tough to be any pass considering that Drew had 70
I
passing
know.
yards in the game. The longest pass of the day was the Tyler Warren crossing route, 19-yarder, where he got some yards after the catch there.
Yeah,
After that,
34-yard Katron Allen run, yeah.
it was the
That
Caden Saunders 13-yard reception. Like, there There were not big plays for this offense. It's interesting, we're
Now,
47 minutes in, and
yeah,
we're just now mentioning the explosive plays, and I think it's partially because, like, we know, right? Like, we're not even expecting them anymore, right?
no.
They called one that I thought Drew didn't wait
Yes,
long
that's
enough. He
that's where I
he
was
had
gonna go,
a
yes.
double move for Keandre, like, Keandre ran a great route. The safety, he had him turned around, and he was gonna run
Mhm.
to the corner of the end zone if he wanted it for a touchdown. Drew threw the check down when he probably had time to end up waiting it out, throwing the ball, and, like,
And the
I think
crowd gasped. You could
yeah,
hear it, like, it was to me,
yeah,
that was because I just remember, like, as the play's unfolding, you see it, you see him run down the field, and then as soon as he takes the check down, you just hear, like, a, "Ugh." I mean, it was
yeah.
yeah, the
Well, I
crowd
think I
knows.
think well, that's to me, that's a byproduct of not building confidence in this earlier in the season, right? Because, like,
Yeah,
when again, I know James said you spend all this time get convincing a quarterback to take the check down. Honestly, give me the guy who's willing to try and fit it in the tight windows, as much as this is gonna pay me as an Eagles fan.
get
Like,
you a
people get on
gunslinger.
people complain about Dak Prescott, but, like, part of the reason he makes those mistakes, this is true of Geno Smith too for the Seahawks, is because they're just trying to fit tight window throws and they'll hit
Yep.
on them a bunch and sometimes they get picked off. Honestly, I'd rather have that guy than Mac Jones, right? Like someone like
Oof,
that that's checking the
oof.
ball down constantly. Like, give me
Yikes.
the guy who believes in himself, believes in his arm. And in high school, Drew was that guy. And last year, it looked like Drew was that guy. And this year,
He
I
ain't
mean,
that guy.
congrats to Penn
Yeah.
State. Like, they convinced him to take the check down, but at what cost?
Yeah, and to me, it's like we're just having a totally different conversation about Drew Allar than I thought we would be. I mean, I was totally bought in on it. I was bought in that this offense was going to be really good. It was going to be explosive. It was going to be exciting, fun to watch. I did ask Nick Singleton after the game. I was like, because I don't think we had talked to him for probably a few weeks, and I was just like, we got all of our most of our Michigan questions kind of out of the way, and I was like, Nick, like, what has this season been like for you? Just genuinely curious. And he was like, well, I'm learning just to kind of take what the defense gives me. And I was like, yeah, but has that been difficult? And he's like, well, no, like Coach Sider works with me all the time to kind of make sure. But I mean, I don't know, John. He's like as steady as they come, even kill as they come. But like that has to be hard. This season has
Yeah, like,
not individually for him gone anywhere how he expected it. There's no doubt about it.
and you and I have been hard on Nick Singleton in recent weeks, but, like, I'm thinking about
Have
this
we,
on the
John?
fly, like, well, at least I have.
Yeah.
But I think, like,
I still think he's
the
damn good. It just hasn't
I
happened.
do too. He just hasn't been good this year, which is
Yeah.
it happens, right? And he 13 carries for 43 yards today after he had some really good runs tells you how poorly a lot of the other ones went.
Mhm.
Like, the idea of I just mentioned the check down thing with Drew. Like, are they kind of taking away Nick Singleton's superpower by telling him to make they're not telling him to make the right decisions. I think they might be telling him to make the safe decision.
We hear a lot
And
of
that is
dirty runs. That's about the dirty runs. We gotta pick up a
yeah,
few
like,
yards. Yeah.
and so how often is Singleton now just standing with his hand on the back of a lineman waiting for the pile to move when it's like, oh, if he just there was one run today, if he just
Yeah.
bounces it outside like he had done time and
Yeah.
time again last year, where he's gone. And I know people complain about like running backs who bounce it outside all the time.
Well, and that was what a
Honestly,
lot
like,
of people complained about last year with Singleton,
Saquon
right?
Barkley has made an NFL career doing that,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's a lot of times when Saquon finishes with like 20 carries for 100 whatever yards,
Mhm.
it's 2 carries that were 80% of those yards, right? Like, that's who the guy is, and that's why they're so successful. And I think on some level, are they making Singleton into a workhorse when that's not who he is? That's not who he is as a
John,
runner. That's not who he is as a
that might have
player.
been that might have been the most profound thing you've ever said on the Nittany Dispatch. I think that's a really good I think there might be something to that.
Yeah, listen, thought about it on the fly because we talk about it with Drew. Like, I think at the end of the day, they got too conservative as an offense as a whole. And like,
Mhm.
so I wonder when, and it'll be interesting at the end of the year, I'll go back and rewatch every game because I'm a glutton for punishment. But like,
True.
this is, yeah, and like, I'll probably write about it too and do a good, bad, ugly on the whole thing. And I'll be curious to see, has this been the case all year with Nick? It's harder to remember those games like West Virginia is the further away you get.
Gosh,
But I'm
yeah.
guessing when I go back and watch, I will find that he's kind of got his hand on the back of a lineman too often, right? And he's kind of waiting for plays to develop rather than just trusting his athleticism. Um, but yeah, I think it goes, it goes to like this identity of this team is to be determined 10 games in, which is
Yeah.
not
Which
great.
is
Like,
never a good sign.
James keeps saying that it's like to stay on schedule. It's like, no, dude, that's not what we mean. It's like that's not. No one's identity is to stay on schedule, right? Like
Yeah.
your
That is a
identity
basic
is
job requirement.
yes, like that's the simplest thing you can do. I can't stand when that keeps getting said, but like it's so it's an identityless offense that's making the identity of its players to like, hey, play it safe, like don't mess this up, right? Like if the idea is don't mess this up, it's well, it's messed up a whole season. Now they're gonna at best go 10-2 again.
John, we mentioned a little bit earlier with, probably going 10 and 2. New Year's 6, where we stand at this moment on Saturday, November 11th. What do you think the shots are? Because yes,
Slim to
Penn
none.
State travels well. Okay. I am kind of penciling in the Citrus Bowl at this point.
Me too. Unless they lose one of the honestly, even if they lose the last two, like 8-4
Yeah.
probably gets them the Citrus Bowl too. It's just one of those things where there are going to be too many teams ahead of them. So they were 10th coming
Mhm.
into this. Clearly,
Mhm.
the playoff committee's not impressed. Do you think the
Right.
playoff committee is going to be impressed with this one? They would have to jump teams like
Now,
Ole Miss
John.
getting it handed to them by Georgia, but like they're not going to jump Ole Miss because they also lost this week. Ole Miss is probably going to win their last two. Like all of these teams ahead of them are probably going to either win out or only lose one more, giving them also two losses along with Penn State. Penn State's going to fall behind teams this week. I think they're probably going to be ranked around like 15th by the time the last playoff poll comes out.
The Because James Franklin likes to bring up the fact that Penn State lost to Ohio State by one possession, even though it certainly didn't feel like it.
This was two. This was a two
Had
possession game.
Yes, but had you gotten the extra points, then
That's true.
he could then say to us, "Hey, yeah, but we lost both those games by one possession,"
Hey,
but they didn't.
that's real honor and integrity there. Taking away an excuse. That's what a guy.
I,
But no, like they're gonna struggle to jump teams the rest of the way, and they're not gonna like, and they're gonna fall behind them this week. So, I mean, we'll see. Like this, I think Tuesday we're gonna know a lot, right? Because there's not gonna
yeah,
be any mobility for them because Michigan State and Rutgers aren't gonna move the needle. Although Rutgers like has been sneaky competitive
I was
this
gonna
year.
say Rutgers might help a little bit.
Outside of facing the vaunted Iowa Hawkeyes this week, going down 22-0 in what was a game that I will rewatch because again, glutton for punishment and all that.
That's a
It's
sicko
some
fest.
yeah, it's sicko behavior, but I can't help myself. It's funny. I think it's funny. Uh, but no, I think like the chances of them making a New Year's Six are slim, and to go 10-2 as Penn State and not make it New Year's Six, like it's a scheduling problem, but it's also you're not impressing anyone. Like that's the
Yeah.
problem. It's more than anything because part of the whole thing with the playoff committee is to impress these people, to make them think that's a good football team. Why would you feel that way when you watch Penn State?
I mean, I think if anything, you leave those 2 big games feeling way worse about this program. You say you're not anywhere close to Ohio State, although James Franklin did point out again today, we saw maybe the best 2 defenses in the country.
We gotta stop doing this. We just
Yeah.
we gotta stop. I get it. I get what he's saying, and he's not wrong. Like these are two of the best defenses in the country, and then he said like two of the best teams. It's like please, like this is
Yeah.
I I understand part of his urge. It seems like is to like qualify things with like, hey, look how successful the program is. Look how successful, despite yes, these failures are happening, but like look at all the other successes and like look how competitive Penn State is with these other programs. But no one cares. He said it. He nailed it when he said it a couple weeks ago. No one cares. And so, like, no one cares that this is one of the best
Right.
teams, best defenses in the country when it can't stop Michigan enough, or when there's schematic flaws that lead it to not stopping Michigan, when they can't stop one of the best players in the country, if not the best player in the country, and Marvin Harrison Jr., which, by the way, is to be expected. But still, like, if you're going to say you're at that level, you have to step up in these massive moments, and they just haven't. And for as awesome as the defense is, and there's, again, still a world where this is the best defense in the country, I still don't think that's, like, an insane argument to make. But it's clearly top 5 to 10 at the
Yeah.
very worst. But no one cares, man. No one cares. Like, you
Read
got
the
to stop
room.
saying, yeah. And he read it
But
perfectly after
but
Indiana, which is the interesting thing.
But the interesting thing to me was, again, and this is why this sport, James Franklin's job to me is so fascinating because he's talking to us, but really you've got recruits lining the gallery, the media room above us
Yep.
that are listening to all of this. So many times when I say he's talking to us, he really isn't. He's talking to the people
He's talking to the whole
upstairs.
room. Yeah.
And so, yeah, so like what do you say after a game like that when this was a
That's a
huge
good point.
recruiting weekend for you too? So I get it, you're not gonna you're not gonna directly say many things, but, like,
You're not gonna go full
definitely did with Mike
2018.
Yurcich without fully saying it. I mean, that was to me, that was the most telling comment that came out of tonight.
Well, honestly, maybe that's said too because of who's in the room, right? Like,
Could
because
be,
who,
yeah.
what recruit is going to watch that game and be like, I want to play in that offense, right? Like, maybe that's like, there's, a message
Yeah,
being
that's a
sent
good
there
point.
too. Like, I don't know. I think, by the way, I'm glad we didn't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it too much more. Like, Jim Harbaugh,
Uh-oh.
the whole situation, like,
Oh,
just,
that
it's so
well,
stupid.
hey,
Like, it's
you
so
weren't the one
stupid.
having to sit at their I shouldn't even say having, I volunteered to sit at their hotel on Friday.
Yeah.
It was a
I was
scene, I wrote
golfing.
about it. Well, the hotel, I won't give the name where they're staying or we're staying at because 'cause I'm sure other teams use it, but there is a golf course, with that hotel, which doesn't
Yes.
narrow it down because there are a lot of those around here.
Yes, there are.
Um, but yeah, nobody like, we were over there. I actually went over to the airport before they landed to check out the scene, but the buses were so far away. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to see anything. There was one lone Michigan fan at the airport waiting for them just to land. And I was like, this is
I
just a
did not know this.
random, like,
Yeah,
really
that's
weird
funny.
thing. But yeah, I mean, you talk about a team that has a lot going on these days, and it certainly is Michigan. And even you felt that emotion afterwards. So you were on the Penn
It's
State
just
sideline at
it's
the end
just
of the
weird.
game.
I don't understand, like, I didn't understand it earlier in this year when they were, like, holding up the number 4 as if, like, they were
John, but it
memorializing Jim
today,
Harbaugh.
yeah, nobody died. We can tell you that.
He got
Um,
suspended for things that he probably did. Like, what are we doing? Like,
the
what are
the
we doing? I'm
scene
not
on the
saying he did, it's all
sideline.
alleged, but, like, what are we doing? It's a suspension for doing something you shouldn't at work.
Well, there was a player holding up a whiteboard, like, on the sideline. It said "Free Jim," and then it had the
Oh my
score
god.
written as 15-24, which just bothers me as a sports fan. You should put the highest score first. That's just a me
Yeah,
thing.
that's
Drives
not
me
how you
nuts.
write a score. That's not how
But
you do
then
that.
on the flip side of the whiteboard, it said, don't need to steal to win." So
Is
again,
that
this was
Hold
a
on,
state.
hold on. Is that an admission of guilt? Like, is that what that
It's
is? Because that
again,
sounds like an admission of guilt.
sounds like to me college kids with a whiteboard and they're gonna write some
Yes,
things.
true. That's
Um,
true.
but I do
That's
think
actually
for
that's probably all that happens there. That's not really an admission of
oh
guilt.
yeah, yeah. There
Yes, it is.
I think this is very much like for Michigan, this was a bit of a rallying cry. This was a hey, us against the world type of moment.
Yeah.
And
I
we'll see
can't
with
I
that.
just can't
Like
get with
it's
this.
just a
Like,
bizarre story. It's
it's
gonna
so
probably continue to get more bizarre. Talking to my colleague Austin Meek, who does a tremendous job covering
Yep.
Michigan at the Athletic. We were talking about it today, and it's like, man, like good luck the rest of the season covering all of this because it's just gonna continue to be an absolutely crazy scene. But John, I did want to make sure we hit on these other two talking points that I found impressive, but for
Thank
two
you for
very different reasons.
thank you for changing the subject because I can feel myself getting visibly
Yes.
frustrated with the way that people react to this. Like, it
hmm
just drives me insane.
I could read the signs that you were giving out, John.
Yes, that's right. Only an hour into the pod.
Only an hour in. Um, one, the traffic situation at Beaver
Oh,
Stadium. I
brutal.
I understand that for a noon kick, everyone
I hate
arrives
to
at the same
I
time.
hate to cut you off again, but just to compare it to the one point, could you
Good.
imagine if Jim Harbaugh had a police escort at like 11:30
Well,
after
this
if
was
they
my
got the
other question.
injunction and they would have like driven him through this terrifying traffic, or would he have to sit? Like, would he have to
Well,
also wait?
literally that crossed my mind when this whole thing was unfolding this morning or Saturday morning, and they're like, "Is there going to be an injunction? Is he going to make it?" And I was like, "Unless he's getting an escort, he's not making this game."
Yeah,
It was one of the worst traffic scenes here in State
brutal.
College that I've seen. It took me about an hour. I live 10 minutes from the stadium, and I'm not living off of like one of the main entrances. Like I am
Yeah.
not on one
Well,
of the main drags.
and so the entrance that you go through, I think we could probably just say it's the Fox Hollow one, right?
Yeah.
That like
Yeah.
that's I go the back
Yep.
way. I live out in Pleasant Gap. I think I've mentioned that before on here. So I go around like the back way to the airport, right through like Belfont and everything.
Mhm.
And it's usually a 15-minute drive, right? And that's even with traffic going the back way. Like, I get there and I get to about Toff Trees after you go past the airport and everything. Those from the area will know what we're talking about.
Yep.
And like the traffic's backed up that far.
Yes.
It's
It was
8:50 or it's
awful.
8:30 at that point. Nobody is ever backed up that far. The traffic pattern starts at 9. My pass doesn't say that letter. I go that way because it is the quickest way to the parking lot that we're in. And I like had to make an executive decision. I was like, you know what? we're going to get to the front of this line. They're going to send
They're
me
gonna
back because I'm not going to have it. So I cut through Toff Trees, went the whole way up Atherton. I went a back way, which I will not be sharing on this podcast because I don't want other people to steal it.
Ooh.
Like I went the back way, but it still took an hour and a half. I live 15 minutes away from the stadium. It was horrible today. By the way, I am realizing we forgot to take a photo of the scary steps, or at least I did. That's our fault.
Oh, I
We
did
need to
too. I did too.
Rutgers.
Next
We
week.
need
Next week.
again the people who have asked us in our mentions, say it again.
Yes.
And it would be, honestly, I'm not kidding. Tag us in a tweet on Saturday and tell us to take a picture of the scary steps. Because it is funny. I
They'll
kind of
probably be
walked by them.
winterizing the stadium as we do it, so it'll probably be extra
Yeah.
horrifying.
Yeah, and I'll have to I'll feel the butterflies in my stomach as I look up that far. But we will get a photo of this. It's been, as you can imagine, a pretty hectic day.
But
But we
John, I'm
will
not
get
done
that
yet.
photo.
I'm
Tweet
not
at
done yet.
us.
I want to go back to the traffic because I think in the off season, because again, I've heard about it from fans. I've written about it several times on The Athletic. I get that we live in a really remote location where there are only so many ways in, so many ways out. But after the whole run your route thing was rolled out several years ago, I'd like to see the studies that are showing that this is helping or hurting because it's a mess. And like, I
I
get
bet
it,
it is helping for non-noon kickoffs. For a
but
noon
for
kick,
noon, yeah.
it just doesn't work.
And
And this goes to say, maybe stop having. I know everyone else in the press box likes these games being at noon. Stop having these massive games at noon.
well,
I am
that's
begging you.
TV. That is
It just,
TV. That
yeah, I
you're never going
know.
to win that.
I'm
Yeah.
preaching to Fox right now. Stop doing that. Like it is. It's not. The environment is worse. Nothing is. It doesn't feel the
I'm
same. You
gonna
don't get the
push back
fireworks
on
in the
this, John,
entrance.
because this
You
was my
just you
second
just want to
point.
go to bed early.
No,
That's
no, no, no,
all.
no, no, no. My second point. My first point was that the traffic plans need to be revisited in the off season,
Yes.
and I will broach the subject with Pat Kraft about this because it is
Yes.
maddening. And for fans to have to sit through this to come to a game that they're paying a lot of money to, that the price keeps increasing. This was the second largest crowd in Beaver Stadium history, and we're sitting there at the press box at 11
It
o'clock
was.
saying,
I believe it was third largest.
well, maybe I'm just lying now. It was one of the largest crowds in Beaver Stadium
There was a lot
history.
of people there.
A lot of people there, and there probably would have been more if the traffic wasn't so horrendous.
Yeah, true.
But you're asking a lot of your fans. These fans care a hell of a lot about this place, about this team. They're shelling out a lot of money to come here and do this. But to ask them to sit there like this, I mean, it was bad. Like I
Yeah.
was sitting behind, and again, I was still there by 10 o'clock this morning, plenty of time, but there was an RV behind me laying on the horn. There was a woman who got
Oh
out of her
god.
car and was yelling at a police officer about like why is traffic stopped because they had a VIP coming through, which the VIP was the team. Because for a hot second I was like, "Is that Jim Harbaugh? Is he coming?" um, but
Again,
to
I
the
very much like
fans,
the idea of Jim Harbaugh showing up at halftime like Stone Cold Steve Austin style with 2
yeah,
glasses of milk, slamming them together with a
run it
steak.
in.
Yeah,
to
running
the
in.
credit of these fans, because again, we're sitting there in the stadium at 11 o'clock, and I'm like, this might be a late arriving crowd for your biggest home game of the year. The fans showed up, and there were a
They
lot of
always do.
them. The stripe out looked tremendous. The students
Yep.
showed up. A lot of Michigan fans there, but you expect
Yeah,
that.
there were this felt
Yeah.
like the most away fans that I
Most
can remember in the last 3 years.
Yes, definitely most away fans. Or at least it felt like that to me. But really,
They
really
were loud too.
great visual. They were loud, and I think part of it too might be that they kind of stood out because when you got the stripe out and you're sitting there in a a maize colored T-shirt.
Thought you were gonna call it yellow, and then I thought all of the Michigan fans who are
No,
listening
no, no, no,
to
no. John,
Schadenfreude
I
were
don't.
gonna yell
I'm
at you.
not here to anger the opposing fan base. That is clearly your
Listen,
thing.
Audrey, I think we already did that when we brought up
Aha!
our thoughts on the Harbaugh scandal.
I
So,
pulled it up, John, because I'm a woman of accuracy.
is it
Today's
second?
attendance 110,856. I said as I was tweeting this, which is what they're saying over the loudspeaker, unless I misheard, second largest crowd in Beaver Stadium history.
Huh, well, I'll take
Also
your word for it.
possible I misheard, but there were a lot of people there. But to me, that
Yes, and a
was
lot of people in the press box too, which I don't know if people know this. That does contribute to the attendance numbers. Like the number of media members there is like part of that
which
formula.
do you know what that means to me, John? That number today, that
You are correct for what it's worth.
110,856 But what was that?
You can
I didn't
find
hear you.
it.
What'd you say?
I hate you. You can find this at centerdaily.com. We had a story about the top 10 crowds where they
There you
rank,
go.
where this ranked. September 29th, 2018, 110,889 was the most. This was second. Third was actually Iowa of this year. This is the third time this year that they topped 110,000 people.
It's huge.
Eerily similar to that 2018 game against Ohio State, like we said too. A lot of the same emotions, maybe for different reasons.
It would have only been 110,855 had Packers GM Brian Gutekunst not been there today, but he was
That's
there.
right.
Man, the list of scouts that you alluded to, John, it was
It's a lot.
robust. Obviously, the Packers play the Steelers tomorrow, so for Goody, this was like a closer trip. Packers had 3 scouts in attendance. I wanted to go down there and just start laying my thoughts out to them during halftime, but they left at half, so I had to control myself and stay
Do you
focused
think
on
they
the
left
job.
it Do you think they left at halftime because they're going to have to watch the same game tomorrow when the Packers play the Steelers?
Yes. I mean, I left there
No.
thinking, wow, what a sad state of affairs that you get to watch this today and then you get to watch that tomorrow.
On the bright
Um,
side, I think they're going to see more than 134 total passing yards tomorrow. Did you know Michigan did not record a pass in the second half?
I did know that. I did know that.
I know there was
Or
one that
I
got
thought it was
called
from the
back, I
second
think.
quarter. I think it was
Yeah,
technically
it was sometime in the second quarter was the last one. Isn't
yes.
that wild? I did not know this
Insane.
until someone else brought it
Insane.
up because there was one. I think there was an attempted pass that maybe was a penalty, whatever. Like, or it was the Kalen King DPI. I think that got called back. Maybe I don't know. Today was a blur. But yeah, like
Today
there
was a
was.
blur.
We didn't talk about that. I don't like to be the officiating person ever in any circumstance because usually things balance out. What did you think of that pass interference? Because I've heard people.
I didn't have a good enough view at it, honestly. I'll have to go
To
back and look
me,
at it. It's
I'll have
not
to
why they
rewatch
lost
it
the game, I can tell you that.
for sure. This is the most important part of this is that this has nothing to do with why they lost the game. I thought it was OPI when I saw it. I tweeted that. I called it abhorrent because it looked abhorrent when I first saw it. I'll be curious to see when I can watch the TV copy what that ends up looking like.
Officially, this is what my colleague Stuart Mandel at The Athletic had tweeted.
There we go.
Officially, Michigan did not throw a pass after 7 minutes and 41 seconds of the second quarter.
Do we know when that pass interference call was? That is crucial here. I think it was in the second quarter. Right? Was it not? This is good podcasting by us. No, there it is. It was okay. I wasn't losing my mind. It was in the fourth quarter. The 15-yard penalty on Kalen King. So that would have been the one that was a pass, but it wasn't technically an official pass attempt because there was a penalty on the play. But yeah, that was, I mean, more indication of Michigan being confident that they can run the ball. But I think that's probably a good place to leave it today. We have run the gamut. We thank you for hanging around with us. As I said at the jump, follow us, follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, hit the subscribe button down below. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the like button on YouTube, leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. That always helps us a lot. Follow Audrey at OddSnyder4 on Twitter. Follow her work at The Athletic. Follow me on Twitter at John Sauber with my writing at centerdaily.com. Both of us, if I do say so myself, have very good stories up after today's game, kind of taking you into the loss, talking about a lot of the stuff we talked about today, but even more depth. It has been a long day for everyone, for you as well, I assume. I hope we helped you through it. I hope you digest what happened. We will be back again before the Rutgers game, probably on
Midweek,
Tuesday night,
we will be here.
for Wednesday morning. Yep. Talking about whatever there is to talk about at that point. Maybe it's more potential playoff scenarios, what's happening there. Maybe it's or New Year's Six scenarios, I should say. It's my New Year's playoff scenarios. It's late. I've been up
time to
since
get
8
out of
o'clock.
here.
Yeah. But thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.